My guest today is Laney Hawes, a Keller mother with children in Keller ISD. Laney, Tarrant County Judge Tim O'Hare made an interesting tweet about the Texas Association of School Boards, which provides training, legal advice, and insurance to public school boards. And he said there is now an alternative to TASB for Texas school districts. And then he shared this website for a new group called Texans for Excellence in Education. And you've done some interesting investigation into this new alternative to TASB. What have you found?
So when Tim O'Hare started talking about this organization and saying, oh, you should join this group, kind of really all of our spidey senses went up. We have seen how politically polarized everything has been. And so as soon as he mentioned it, we thought, what is this? What is he talking about? Nobody's ever heard of this. So I'm part of actually a large group of parents. I say large group, there's about 20 of us. We have an ongoing group chat, and we are parents from school districts around North Texas, right? So we've got all the school districts you've seen in the news lately, plus some. And instantly, we all kind of jumped on our group chat and we said, what is this organization? What is TEE that Tim O'Hare is pushing? And then we saw a member of the State Board of Education pushing it. And then we saw a state legislator pushing it. And we quickly found that this organization was secret, right? There were no listed people. We couldn't find almost anything. In fact, the listed address was at one of those buildings that's a rentyouradresshere.com, right? You can just like buy access to put that as your address, but it's an abandoned building in like downtown Dallas. So there was nothing there. So we started doing a little bit more research and we decided, let's look into where the business was registered, right? We quickly found out it was registered in Delaware. We know from all sorts of work we've done and researching things that when you register a business in Delaware, you do it because you want to keep things secret and hidden. So that was already clearly red flags. What's great though about this organization is it's a nonprofit, right? And so that means it's registering documents like its director and address can be, we can request it. We can go to the state of Delaware and request it. And someone in our group requested it. And it's funny because they don't do electronic requests. It has to be like snail mail or like FedEx. So we got this piece of paper a week later in the mail to find out who was the listed agent, who's the director, and where is their real address. And a name popped up that was super unfamiliar. None of us had heard of it. It was Adrian Verdin, and an address that seemed to be a condo or an apartment in downtown Dallas that was, a personal apartment or a condo. And so it wasn't a business. We could look it up and see who the management owners were, but we didn't, So we did a little bit of research. We started kind of poking around and Adrian's name started popping up as being associated with the hospitality industry in Dallas. And normally we wouldn't think much of that, except for the fact that a man named Monty Bennett, who is deep in the hospitality industry. In fact, one of, I would say, like the big players in the DFW area, has in the past few years been actively involved in pushing voucher schemes and private schools and funding strange things. There was a really interesting article in the Texas Monthly by Forrest Wilder about this voucher scheme down, I think, in Wimberley ISD, Dripping Springs, and he was behind it all. And so instantly we thought, oh, hospitality industry. We did a little bit more research. We got really, really creative in our research. We really dug down deep into social media profiles of this guy and then did a little bit of research into voter registration. And we found out that this guy works for Monty Bennett or has and is currently friends with him because regularly goes to Monty Bennett's ranch and shares it on social media. And then we found the address that was listed was his fiance's condo because she's registered to vote there. What's funny is that these two people listed on this document with their address, they promote roller skating rinks with bars in them, right? Like they have no association with schools. They don't have any children. And so we were like, oh, okay. And then we did a little more research. We started looking at the campaign filings of everyone in North Texas who ran for school board last May. And as we started digging into these campaign filings and documents, we found one person was donating to campaigns all over North Texas, not in one school district, and it was Monty Bennett. He was donating to individual campaigns. We came to realize it's all these same groups of people. He'd also donated significantly to Tim O'Hare's campaign.
Absolutely.
He donated to Nate Schatzline's campaign. And so it was pretty obvious to us at this point that Monty Bennett was very closely tied to, if not behind entirely, this Texans for Educational Excellence, which is come out of nowhere and is very secretive about who they are, and very clearly has a political agenda. In fact, we had seen them once before. We had seen the organization once before, and they paid for campaign ads in a few school board races over the last 2 years. And so kind of interesting that we've got this organization claiming to be nonpartisan, claiming their only agenda is, education, but they are paying for campaign ads for candidates. So that's not true, right?
Yeah, and Monty
And what we really think is happening here is kind of like a pay to play, like a quid pro quo. Like, hey, Monty Bennett will donate, a significant sum of cash to your campaign. If you're elected, you will then vote to leave TASB and enter this new organization. At least that's our assumption. That's very much so what it looks like to us.
Yeah, yeah. And Monty Bennett is a very partisan individual. So if he's the person behind this organization, it's safe to say that this organization probably is not nonpartisan.
Nonpartisan. Well, I mean, we know it's not nonpartisan because they're political campaign ads, right?
Yeah.
And one place that this organization keeps being touted is in the Dallas Express. And anybody who knows the Dallas Express knows that it's this pink slime journalism, which is ultimately kind of a propaganda-based news, I say that lightly, news source. And Monty Bennett owns it. And all of a sudden, these articles that are promoting TE as this amazing organization are popping up in Monty Bennett's newspaper. Right. So, yeah, I mean, we can put the pieces together.
Yeah. The Dallas Express is interesting. During the race between Tim O'Hare and Deborah Peoples, Tim O'Hare tried to get out a bogus story on voter fraud. He was trying to use this old footage of this gentleman who was a felon. And no one would take the story. And so what happened eventually was it got picked up by the Dallas Express, and they ran a promotional ad on Facebook. They were actually pushing it. And again, to run a bogus story, but then to pay Monty Bennett probably spent a lot of money pushing that false story through his publication. And that was partly what led Tim O'Hare to
and then
office.
Then when you're pushing and you're paying for one article, you're campaigning. That's a campaign ad.
It looked
That's
like,
no longer news. It's a campaign ad, right? And then we're not partisan, but we promote. Absolutely.
He's willing to do anything to help Tim O'Hare up. Yeah.
The Dallas Express also ran articles against school board candidates here in Keller ISD during the last campaign. We had somebody write an article against one of our candidates who lost, and it ran into the Dallas Express. We had one of our school board members who is funded by these PACs and Patriot Mobile. She wrote an op-ed, and it went in the Dallas Express, calling all of us parents who disagreed with her the woke mob. So all of a sudden, we're seeing all these things appear in the Dallas Express that are very one-sided. And then also it's promoting this organization, and it's funded by Monty Bennett, who's also paying for the campaigns. Anyway, it's this twisted web, but it is very clear where the money is.
Good job tying it all together. I just wanted, it's incredible detective work you guys have done. Carroll ISD, which oversees Southlake, voted to leave TASB, presumably to join this new group. What are we seeing in Keller? What are they making motions to leave TASB?
So the board hasn't even brought it up yet, but it's interesting because we have these groups of people who've been coming every week or every month to school board meetings, and they're bringing it up at all the school board meetings, and they're talking about why they should leave TASB. And so I mean, they're setting the stage for it, right? They're getting people to think, because let's be honest, before this year, I would venture to say 99% of Texans had no idea what TASB was. And so if you have these like random parents showing up to be like, leave TASB, like what? I mean, who even know? Until this year, we didn't know what TASB was, because now it's been politicized. Now we have this giant movement to quash it. So it's funny, right? And one thing we've noticed too is a lot of people talking about it, they think it's TEA, right? So as you talk to people, they don't actually even know what TASB is. And it is very different. This isn't the state.
What do you think the long-term goal is? Because you understand the politics in Keller and Southlake. So for these school boards to leave TASB and join this new group that may be backed by Monty Bennett, what's their end game?
The end game is multifaceted, and it's actually really devastating and frustrating. I think really primarily it's unfortunately about money, right? It's about people, lining pockets. If we look at Monty Bennett, he's likely involved because he wants to help fund some of these other schools, some of these private schools, the voucher plan, right? He stands to potentially make a lot of money. There's also a really, really strong movement to ultimately, as we're seeing these arguments, as we call organizations like TASB woke and trying to indoctrinate our children, really the purpose is to undermine public education. It's to make people stop trusting our public schools. They
Yeah.
attack they attack the funding system, they attack TASB, they attack the libraries, they attack the teachers. And before we know it, we have communities of people who don't know. They're like, can I trust my kids' schools, right? Because all they're seeing is this yelling and screaming. And what doesn't make the news is really simple, normal stories about how our schools are great and our kids are doing all right, right? And they have teachers who love them. So we have all of these separate movements, whether it's TASB, whether, like I said, whether it's school finance. We have all these movements to make people really start to distrust public education, and then vouchers become much, much easier to pass. And then it's really, I mean, what's funny is they say that our public schools are indoctrinating children. But really, the plan is truly for a bunch of private schools to cut out ideas that they don't like and actually indoctrinate children. You know, when your goal is to cut out a whole set of ideas you disagree with and only allow children to hear one set, that's indoctrination. It's not indoctrination when you say, here's the whole picture, decide for yourself. So I really believe the end goal is to undermine public education so that these organizations can be make a bunch of money. But I do think there's also, and this is where it can get really complicated, another really deep part of this, which is Christian nationalism. I don't say that lightly, and I don't mean all Christians. I have to always be clear, right? I don't have a problem with Christians. I am a Christian. But this movement of Christian nationalism, and we've seen it. We have a member of our school board who firmly believes that the separation of church and state is not a thing and was not established in the Constitution. And they truly believe there's a movement to bring Christianity. We see Nate Schatzline all day long talk about it. We see Tim O'Hare. We see Matt Krause. They talk about these things to make biblical values and Christian family values the basis for public education policy and curriculum. So it's like this two-part movement where both of those things are happening. And I think that's where kind of the book banning comes in, right? We're starting to see all these policies that ban any books with ideas that run contrary to this Christian ideal that they have set up. It's not what Christianity is. It's the definition, the very narrow definition that this group with all the power and money has defined. So yeah, it's two-part. It's money, it's and undermining public ed, but then there's also this Christian nationalism piece, which is, I believe, really terrifying, to be honest with you.
And dangerous.
It's dangerous, yes.
Yes, absolutely. So we're going to be covering this in an upcoming cover story, so we'll have to kind of cut it off there, but we'll be exploring these topics in depth in about 2 weeks. Laney, go ahead and plug your social medias. I know Twitter, you're big on Twitter and Instagram. Yes. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter. I'm just there as Laney, right? Laney Hawes. And I mostly just kind of share my experience as a parent of 4 children in Texas public schools. So when I see all these politicians get up and say, this is what's happening in public schools, and these politicians don't have kids in public schools, they have their kids in private schools, I say, no, that's not true. I have 4 children in public schools, and this has been my experience. So I use Twitter for that. We've also, we've actually, as a group of parents, have created a nonprofit here called Keller ISD Families for Public Education. And you can find us on Facebook and Instagram, where we're just trying to get out the word, educate people, let them know we just want to go back and make school meetings boring again. We just want to go back to where our kids could go to school and it wasn't turning into these giant culture wars at every meeting and, things like that. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for this moment of sanity. Public school board meetings are getting crazy these days, but it's nice to know there are parents out there who want to refocus the conversation on children, education, and everything that public schools were meant to be. So you guys are a part of that in Keller, and we appreciate you guys fighting that good fight. So thanks for your time, and folks, look out for a cover story on this topic in a couple of weeks. Thanks for your time, Laney.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. It was fun.